I'll give it another minute for me to figure things out and for a few more people to hop on. Hello, hello. Thanks for coming. People see me. All right. Well, I guess I will get started. I'm so used to Zooms where it's interactive and I can see other people, so this is very bizarre. I'm sorry, but this is my first time, so please excuse me if I'm awkward. Okay, so I guess I'll get started. My name is Jen, and hi, Stephanie. My name is Jen Wilson. I live in Southern California. I have a wonderful husband, Jonathan, and two sweet boys. My oldest is Jonah, he's 16, and my youngest is Jarrett, and he's 14. And as most of you know, Jarrett is my one on the spectrum. He was diagnosed at around 2.5 years old, right before we moved from St. Louis to California. And then shortly after that, we started noticing other things. So later on down the road, we discovered he also has ADHD, anxiety, and apraxia. So I always joke that he's got straight A's because he has all the A's. So he is 14 now, which is crazy. It's like over COVID, he became a full-on man-child. So that's very, very bizarre. If any of you have kids that are going through puberty, it's jarring, especially when they act so much younger in every other way. So going through that, but so far puberty's been okay for him. He's rolling with the punches, and so am I. And today I wanted to just talk about the tips and tricks and tools that I've discovered along the way. I'm no expert by any means, but I have been doing this now for 14 years, 12 if since he's been diagnosed, and I've had a lot of luck in terms of getting great professionals in my life that have taught me a lot of things that are really have been helpful for me. So I wanted to share those things with you, and also I wanted to let you guys know, please, I'm looking at the comments, so please just text a comment if you have anything you want to ask me, or if you just want to respond to something I'm saying. If something strikes a chord, I'd love to hear that, if things are helpful or whatever, because, again, this is my first time, so I'm just trying to get used to this whole format. So anyway, when Jarrett was younger, I feel like one of the very first things that I learned, literally right after he got diagnosed, that I learned that's very helpful. Let me back up for a second. I didn't mention this so far, but Jarrett's minimally verbal, so he can speak. His words didn't really start coming till age 4. With the apraxia, it's hard to understand him, so it kind of sounds like he's from Italy. I always joke that he has like this funny accent when he says things. It's really cute, but it also makes it hard for him to be understood a lot of the time. So his speech is there, but it's minimal. So for example, he'll answer yes or no questions, and he will tell me his basic wants and needs, and sometimes he'll point things out, but it's not really conversational unless I'm asking him questions and he's like responding to my questions. Then it's kind of a little bit of a back and forth, but other than that, it's mostly just, things he wants or things he needs, things like that. So early on, before he really started speaking, he would have a lot of behaviors, more than he does now, because he couldn't communicate. And so And we would have a lot of trouble with transitions back then. And for example, his brother and him, when he was 2 and his brother was 4, we lived in St. Louis, they would like bounce around on the bed before bath time. And I would try to get Jared into the bath, and every single night it would be like this kicking and screaming struggle to get him into the bath. And my gut told me it wasn't anything to do with the bath itself, but that it was just that he was struggling with the transition, but I didn't know what to do about it. So I mentioned that to somebody early on, and they said that it would be great for you to count back from 5 right before you're transitioning him to whatever it is that you want him to do. So for example, first you praise him for what he's doing already, and then you say, in 5 seconds, we're going to go into the bath. And so I would say, for example, Jared, you're doing so great playing on the bed with your brother. You're bouncing so well and you're doing great. It sounds silly, but you're supposed to praise them for whatever they're doing. And then you say, but in 5 seconds, we're going to go into the bath. And so I say that a couple times. In 5 seconds, we're going to go into the bath. And then I go, okay, it's almost bath time. And I say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time for bath. And I'm not even joking you. The first time I did that, he literally like got down off the bed and he like walked right into the bath and got in. And I had tried every single thing prior to that for the months leading up to that to get him into the bath without a struggle, and I never found any success with anything I tried. I tried, sneaking up on him. I tried swinging him upside down. I tried hot water. I tried cold water. I tried bubbles. I tried no bubbles. I tried brother, no brother. I tried, whatever the case may, anything you can think of, I tried, and none of those things worked. And so it was just so amazing to me that this one little trick that I never would have thought would work actually helped him to make that transition into the bath, and with no problem. And he literally, after that, we never had a problem again. And so as a mom of a nonverbal kid, he was nonverbal at the time, when struggling to get him to do different things, that was like a game changer for me. And I was able to transition him for anything I needed, like getting into the high chair, getting into the car, getting out of the bath, getting, time for bed, whatever it is. And it was really amazing. So I highly recommend that if you have a kiddo that struggles with transitions, especially the little ones. I mean, sometimes I still use it even now. Like he's much older, but we used that for years and we used it for everything. So I highly recommend trying that if you have a kid that struggles with transition. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The other thing is that praise goes a long way with kids on the spectrum. Positive reinforcement. So it may sound stupid, but if your kid's playing quietly in a room or being good in the car or whatever it is, you might think, I don't want to like wake a sleeping bear, they're doing great and I don't want to interrupt and it might screw things up. But the more positive reinforcement they get and the more they understand when you are happy with them, the more likely they are to continue that behavior. So I found that out from some experts early on, and I try to use it as much as I can. So for example, if he was doing a puzzle or something like that, you're doing so great playing quietly and with your puzzle or whatever it was, so that he understood that that is something that is, that is the desired behavior. And so he realizes, oh, okay, so this is what I should be doing. Because a lot of times as parents, even with regular kids, we tend to say a lot of don't, no, stops. And those are the kind of things that, the kids with autism especially don't understand the don't know stops as much as they do telling them exactly what you want them to be doing. So the positive speech is also very important. So for example, if you don't want your kid to climb on something, we'd say, instead of saying get down, no, or stop, you would say feet on the ground, we want to stay on the ground, or see, I even said don't there, but you try not to say no, don't, or stop, and you say what you want them to do. So, for example, instead of saying don't scream, you would say quiet voice, Or you would say if their body is, moving and you want them to be calmer, you would say calm body, or you would say quiet voice, or you would say calm hands, or hands on the table, or feet on the floor. So these are the common things that I was told and that I found very useful when he was younger. I still do it to this day. I always say quiet voice, calm body, instead of no, don't, and stop kind of comments, because again, the positive speech is important, and also telling them exactly what you want them to do instead of what you don't want them to do. It's harder for them to understand the like blanket negatives, like no, don't, stop. They need to be told exactly what you want them to be doing. Maybe as they get older, it's not as important, but at those younger years especially, it is important. And I just got a comment about apraxia. So really quickly, if you're not familiar with apraxia, it's basically a motor planning issue. It's a speech disorder. You can have, I think, gross motor apraxia or fine motor apraxia as well. But in Jarrett's case, it's a speech apraxia, where basically, and I'm no speech therapist, but over the years I've learned things about what it is at a high level. But basically, it's where the words are in your brain and you know what you want to say, but when you try to speak, it doesn't come out in the right way. So it sounds differently than what your brain is trying to say. So a lot of times kids with apraxia have low muscle tone in their mouth, in their face. I know Kate has mentioned that Cooper has low muscle tone, and so a lot of it is strengthening the muscles. Jarrett chews a lot of gum. It helps with that a little bit. Getting their mouth. There's mouth exercises you can do. If you have a good speech therapist that knows about apraxia, they will work on things with strengthening the muscles and getting their mouth to be able to do the speech sounds that are required for saying the words that the child is trying to say. So that's just a little background on apraxia. So moving on in terms of, and yes, somebody wrote about the timer works. Great. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but timers are a godsend. That's definitely something that will work. But as a 2-year-old, I think that's a little young for, if you're talking 2, 3, 4, it might be a little young for the timers. But definitely the older kids that can understand that, the timers are amazing. And then in terms of getting his communication out, given that he has apraxia, his words don't sound clear. And I think honestly, over the years, he's gotten to the point where he's just like, well, nobody really understands me, so I'm not even going to bother, which sounds kind of sad, but in all reality, I think it's made him more easygoing because he's realized what his definite wants and needs are, versus like most kids are just talking about every little thing, and he will only try to communicate when it's a definite, like, specific want or need that he has. And so he ends up, not having to, it doesn't stress him out as much as you would think, because he basically is only communicating for the bare minimum types of things. But I try to make it as easy as possible for him to communicate over the years, the types of things that we've used have changed. And basically the main things are that I started off with early on was having him write or type things. I just saw Kate posted about getting Cooper. One of her goals is for him to start typing more. And that was a goal for me early on as well. And writing too. Any kind of communication I could get him to do, I wanted him to do. So early on, I always had a whiteboard available, or I had a piece of paper and a pencil or something like that available. And any time that he would want something or need something, I would basically be like, here's my phone, you can type it into my phone in the notes, or here's a piece of paper or a whiteboard, and he would just write it out. And he would write out all sorts of things. A lot of times if I couldn't understand him, say he was asking for something different than I wasn't used to him hearing him ask, I'd go, buddy, I don't understand you. And so I would give him my phone and say, we're in the car, or I'd give him the whiteboard and he would write or type it out. And that he started using that pretty regularly around the age 6 or 7. Now, keep in mind, Jarrett was reading at age 2 and maybe even earlier. So he is very good at, words and expressing himself written or typing. So I know not all kids are necessarily at that point. We were lucky in that regard because he did know the words that he wanted to say. And so he would write them out or he would type them. And that was amazing because a lot of time, like I said, it sounds like he's like from another country or something. Some of his speech is hard to understand even for me. And I've gotten used to it over the years. So I would just ask him to write it down and it would be, clear what he was looking for. And that was amazing. So I highly recommend, if you haven't tried that yet, like maybe giving your kid something to write out. If you don't understand what they're saying, maybe they will type it. Maybe they will write it for you. You can try that. And if they don't do it now, maybe in a year or two, they will. So just don't give up. Because I remember at one point we had the speech device for him and he would take so long to find he had the Proloquo app, and it would take so long for him to find all the pictures and the buttons to express what he was saying. We found that what he ended up doing was there was like a free, I forget kind of like a notes section of that Proloquo app where you could just type what you wanted and press the button and it would read the sentence. So instead of finding all the pictures that he wants, like I want, hot dog and on all the different screens, he would literally just write, I want hot dog. And so we found out that like the Proloquo wasn't really the best for him because he would just get frustrated with all the different pictures and screens and he ended up just typing out what he wanted anyway. So I was like, well, I'm not going to pay all this money for Proloquo if he's just going to write it out on a piece of paper or write it out on my phone or on a whiteboard. So we just scrapped it and we decided that's the way he was going to communicate instead. So that's been working really well for us. Then the other thing tying into that is I also write things on whiteboards or on paper or on my phone to kind of let him know what things are happening. Say our schedule's a little different. A perfect example of this would be if I wanted to go out with my friends, for example, on a night out, and somebody else was going to be putting him to bed for that night, because I'm usually the one that puts him to bed, and then early on, around ages 5, 6, 7, maybe, I didn't do this technique. And what would happen is my mother-in-law lives with us. Maybe my husband and I would go out to dinner, and like an hour later, we would be getting a call from her that he's really upset. He wants to know when he's going to see you again, and blah, blah, blah. And I would be like, oh my God, it'd just be so hard because it's like he didn't understand. And so then I realized, well, he can read. Why don't I just write it down? So this is kind of an example of what I would do. Say I was going out with my girlfriends, I would write down something like this. I have this little whiteboard, in the kitchen all the time, and I would say like bedtime with daddy at 9 o'clock, see mommy in the morning. And literally it was such a game changer. I started doing this at like, say maybe age 7, and it would say like bedtime with Nana and see mommy and daddy in the morning. And literally she's like, he went right to bed, no questions, didn't ask for me, all he wanted to know was when I was going to be home and when he was going to see me again. And so that was huge because I know a lot of you parents out there are like, can't do anything because your kid gets so upset when you leave, or maybe they do, maybe they don't. But like in our case, he would get upset if he didn't know when I was coming back. So that was like a really big thing for us, because imagine, going from being stressed every time you go out to dinner or go out with friends or whatever, never mind a trip or something like that, but just like one day out, or if I was going to be off with my other son to an activity or a sport, and Jarrett wouldn't know when I was coming home. So I would have the person that's at home with him just write down, like, see mommy at 4 o'clock or whatever, and he'll hold you to it. He was like looking at the watch, at his watch, or looking at the clock, being like, okay, time to get home. So sometimes they'd have to like go in and erase it and change the time if I was running late. But that was amazing for us, and it allowed me to now have some freedoms to go do the things that I would want to do. And he's totally fine now when we do that. So that was huge. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, I mentioned trips and things like that. We went through a period where that was really hard. I couldn't really go places, and he would get upset if I did. And sometimes things just come up, or things, you have to do things. And as a parent, sometimes both my husband and I go somewhere. Sometimes I would go by myself. And so what I realized was, when my other son was really little, like Jonah was like 2, somebody told me, oh, you should try like paper chains, because toddlers really don't understand the concept of time. And so, like, you can say, oh, like, say Christmas is like 4 days away or whatever. They don't really understand that. But if you can make it tangible and visual, that they can understand it. And so it's kind of like, I was like, all of a sudden I had an epiphany when Jarrett was older, that maybe I should just do paper chain links for when I'm going out of town, or I'm going to be gone for a few days or something. So I have used that consistently since he was about 6 or 7, on every trip or any time I go anywhere. And it is like, seriously, been the best thing ever. So I started it on a first trip that I went on, and what I do is these little paper chains. I have a trip scheduled next week with my girlfriend. Yay. Excited about that. And I made this already for that trip. So I just went ahead and did it so I could show you. But basically, you can see there's like 5 chain links. Obviously doesn't matter what color or whatever. And then at the top, I do a picture of me, or whoever it is. So it could be me and Jonah if we're going out of town, or me and Dad, or whatever. And I put it at the top. Sometimes I used to write the numbers on the side, like 1, 2, 3, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 days, so he could actually see the number as well. But now he doesn't really need that. But you can do that as well. I would just use a Sharpie to write the number on the side as well. But basically, when I go out of town, I leave this on the counter for whoever's watching him, and he literally rips 1 piece off a day. And every day when he would wake up, they tell me that he rips one off, like it's the first thing he does. He comes downstairs and he rips off one of the chain links, and it's like, that's all he needed. Like, he just wanted to know when I'm coming home, and now he can see, as the chain links get smaller, the sooner I'll be home. And so on the last day, when he rips the last one, he knows I'm coming home that day. And it's literally been a lifesaver, because now I can go out of town in peace, not worry about if, he's stressing about when I'm going to be home, if he's understanding where I am. He gets it, he understands, and it's no problem. I highly recommend this for all ages. I still do it. He's 14. It's great. Okay. Then the next thing I wanted to talk about is visual schedules. Okay, so I use these a lot for him. I've started these a long time ago as well. When we started traveling with him, I realized he needed to kind of understand what was going to happen. He wasn't able to travel for a few years there. It was really rough. I don't know if you've been following my posts, the 25 days of autism. I've been posting every day. I talked one time about how when he was 3, how rough it was, and I thought we would never be able to travel again. If you have little kids, just know that it does get better. And I was in that boat where I thought we would literally never be able to go anywhere. And I made all of our family come visit us for years because he couldn't handle it. And now we are traveling with him. He actually is an amazing traveler. He's like a little pro going through security. He's great on the plane, things like that. But it took time. And the tools that you can give your child will be what makes them successful. The more things you can give them. So one of the things I started with was, like, if we're taking a trip, for example, we usually go to Hawaii every year, but I do this no matter where we're going. Even if we're driving to a resort like a couple hours away, or going up to Big Bear, which is only a couple hours away from us, I still do it. I basically do something like this. this one has 4 pages, but this is the first page. So it just basically says, this is the one I used from the trip we took to Hawaii this summer. Okay, so we always fly American, so I show a picture of the plane. I say who we're going with on the airplane, Mommy and Daddy and Jonah. I show a picture of the U.S., and here you can see an arrow from California to Hawaii, so he knows that's where we're going. Just as much visual as I can give him, it makes it better for him. Okay, and then I say, okay, this is where we're staying, this is the resort. You're going to sleep with Mommy and Daddy and Jonah. And in this case, we had other friends that we shared a 3-bedroom with. So it was Eddie and Sandra and Christopher. So we knew they were staying with us. Then I explained, this is what the resort looks like. We're going to go on the water slide and swim in the pool. And at the bottom, it says, this is how many days we're going to be there. And it counts the days. Okay, so that was the first page because we went to Kauai first. Then I explained, okay, we're going to go on another plane on what day we're going, and we're going to fly, I forgot the arrow, but basically it should show that we're going from Kauai to Maui. So I had an arrow on there, and we're going to stay in this hotel, and we're going to go in this pool, and this is how many days we're going to stay. And so he knows exactly what's going to happen. He knows what airline we're taking, where we're going, who we're going with, where we're sleeping, what the pool looks like, and he has a visual concept of exactly what's going to happen. And that has been amazing for him to like set his mind at ease. Like, as long as he knows, he's good. Of course, if things change, then it makes things difficult for him, because, you know, change is hard for our kids. But if something happens on the fly, I just like will either cross something off, or I'll write it on the whiteboard. I'm like, okay, I know today we said we were going to do X, but now we're going to do Y. And as long as I can kind of update the schedule real time, then he usually does fine. And generally things don't really change, because I'm a planner and I know he needs those kind of, you know, plans to be set in advance. So usually things don't really change, but sometimes things come up. And I have to kind of be creative and figure out a way to keep him, you know, informed. So that's a big one. I really feel like if you're doing a trip like that with your kiddo, laying out a visual schedule for them is key. And also, just so you know, I keep these visual schedules in my computer, so I just have to tweak them every time we go to Hawaii. If it's a different resort or a different amount of days or whatever, it's not like I'm recreating it over and over again. I just kind of tweak it, you know. So once you have it once, then you know you have it. And by the way, if anybody wants any of these things that I have saved on my computer, just let me know and I can send you what I have. So then the next thing is that you know, so now he knows we're going to Hawaii, but maybe there's an activity that we're going to do while we're there that is something that's different from what he is expecting. Like maybe, you know, he's used to doing certain things in Hawaii, like going to the pool or going to the beach or taking a hike or whatever, or going for a drive. But maybe we're doing a new activity that he's never done before and doesn't know anything about, and he might be anxious about, right? So I create a visual schedule for anything that's new like that. So like one time we went kayaking, and one time we went whale watching, and one time, you know, anything like that that's out of the ordinary. Zip lining. I create pictures. I find pictures from the website from that activity, and I put together something for him so he knows what to expect. So this particular time we went in Kauai, they have a thing where you can go tubing down the irrigation canals. Okay, so that's something totally different he's never done in his life. So I created this little visual schedule, and it just says Jared goes tubing. And I found this picture on the website. It's a picture of the actual building where you go to check in and get all the, you know, gear and stuff like that. Then I found a picture of this vehicle is the vehicle you take to drive to the canal. And then I showed a picture of a boy on a tube. And the big key thing for him is it says put on helmet and gloves. They require helmet and gloves. Always be aware of what is required by the activity for your child so that they're not caught off guard. You know, the big thing for him is if he gets somewhere and all of a sudden you're introducing something that he's not expecting, he's going to freak out just because it's something unexpected. Not even because it's a big deal, but if he's not anticipating it, it can throw off the entire activity for him, and he can just say no because he isn't expecting whatever it is. So I wanted to make sure he was aware that they have to wear a helmet and gloves. And so that is like something that's very hard for him because he doesn't like anything on his person that isn't a normal type thing. Like he doesn't want to wear jackets a lot. He doesn't want to wear hats. He doesn't want to wear anything unusual. So I wanted to make sure he understood if you want to go tubing, you have to wear that. So when we got there, it was no problem. Then the next page shows we're going to sit in the tube and float down the canal. I get all the information from the company ahead of time, so I know exactly what to expect on the ride and how long the ride's going to take, when it should end, and exactly how it's going to be during the ride. So I put like go through 5 tunnels because I knew if that came up and he wasn't expecting it, he would be like, oh my God, what is this? And how long are we going to be doing this? And how many more of these tunnels? Even though he ended up loving the activity and he loved the tunnels and everything like that. Again, if it's unexpected, even if it's something he would like, if it's not expected, he will reject it. And he will just be like upset. It causes him anxiety if he doesn't know what's going on. So as long as he knows what's going on, he's cool with it. So that's why I gather all the information ahead. And of course, he's like super Mr. French Fry Man. So at the bottom, I always say exactly when we're going to end and go get French fries afterwards. So he knows that's his reward and that's what we're going to do at the end of it. These kind of things, game changers. I've used it for skiing. I've used it for swimming with the dolphins. I've used it for all these things that I never thought he would be able to do. He was able to do because I was able to prepare him adequately and he understood what to expect. And sometimes he reads these ahead of time and he's like, no tubing. He'll say no to something. But the more he looks at it, I can see his mind is working and his wheels are turning and he's processing and he's like, wait, this might not be so bad. And then he's accepted it. By the time we go on the activity, he's like, wow, I can do that. I know exactly what's going to happen. And it ends up being fine most of the time. So this activity went great. He was laughing and squealing with delight the entire time. He loved it. If I had not done this, it probably would have been a hot mess. Like, honestly, I don't think he would have been able to do it. And honestly, even a year or two ago, even with the schedule, if I'm being real, he may not have been able to do it because he has matured. I will say that these tools are all great, but also what really helps is your child just getting older and maturing because, with age, your kid just gets able to do more and more things. This year has been a big leap for him in maturity, and I feel like he's less anxious and he's able to do a lot more now than he used to be able to do. So no amount of schedules and stuff like that, at a certain age for him would have been enough. But I will say that it gets you closer every time. Like if you try it and it doesn't work one year, what I'm saying is give it another try because it is something that can come with time. And so don't give up if it doesn't work the first time. But just if your kid's really super visual like Jarrett, try it because it really, really does help to do as much visuals as possible and it reduces the anxiety. I can see his anxiety going down the more I show him. Or if you can show him videos from the website, like I showed him videos of the people tubing or zip lining or things like that. Those all were really big for him. And you can kind of get a gauge too. Like I can watch him watch the videos and see, is that something he's going to like, or is it going to be a hard no? And so that is another thing, because his go-to is just to say no to everything, because he has high anxiety and he's low verbal. So like his natural defense mechanism is to just say, no, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. That's his way of protecting himself. But if I show him these things, then he's like, wait a minute, I can do those things. I don't need to say no. And he's more willing to try. And so I highly recommend that. The other thing I wanted to talk about quickly is, and then I'm going to read some of the questions in case I missed any. I don't know if I'm missing any questions. The school schedules. So he's in 8th grade this year, and their school is, he's in a middle school where they do rotating schedules. So like they have A through F classes every day. So 6 classes a day. But then, so they do A, B, C, D, E, F one day. And then the next day they do B, C, D, E, F, A. So it's like constantly shifting the schedule, which can be really hard for someone like Jarrett because, you can't count on PE being first class every single day. It rotates all the time. But the good thing with him is that he's super visual and he can memorize anything. He has a photographic memory. So what I do is I put together this little color-coded schedule. It's very complex if you look at it at a glance because he's got 6 different classes in 6 different classrooms with 6 different teachers. And like I said, they rotate every day. But I put this in his backpack and I show it to him at the beginning of the school year. And literally once he does it for like a couple days, he has it memorized, and it's really, he doesn't even probably look at this anymore. He does have an aide at the school that helps him go from class to class, but sometimes she's not there, she's sick, or whatever. He at least knows what his schedule is every day. Now, years ago, I would have thought this kind of schedule he would have never been able to do. It's too complicated. I mean, it was complicated for my typical son to rotate classes and have all these different changes every day. But it's worked out great. I made sure to color code it. He knows the teachers' names. He knows the classes. He knows the location. So things like this. If your kid's visual like him and older, if your kid is younger, you can just say, a more basic schedule, like, okay, you're going to go see this teacher in this class in the morning, then you're going to have lunch, maybe you'll go to speech, and then, PE or recess, and then you go home at XYZ time of the day. And so it doesn't have to be this complex obviously for the younger kids. So you can still use a schedule like this, even if your kid is on the younger side. I'm going to go through the questions really quick and make sure I'm not missing anything. Let's see. And feel free to shoot out a comment right now if you want to ask anything. Yeah, transitions are the worst. I agree, Nicole. But they can get better, I promise. Like it used to be, transitions or any change in schedule used to be like the bane of my existence, but now it's working out. Preparation, Cheryl said, for Finn to transition, countdowns and timers are a must. Feet on the floor, tell them what you want. Exactly, that's all the stuff that I just mentioned. You guys got it going on, you know what to do. But let's see, somebody asked the key for transitioning at a young age. Okay, so maybe, is it Jackie? Yeah, you should watch the replay. I talked about this at the beginning, but I have a great tip for transitioning the really little ones. Basically, you praise them for what they're doing already, and then you count backwards from 5, and you just like, in 5 seconds, we're gonna go in the bath, and you say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm not saying it'll work for sure for your kid, but it worked like a charm for mine. And I had tried everything leading up to that to get him to transition to baths. That was just one example, but it was transitioning all day long. Any kind of transition was a really big struggle. And the counting down and the warning. I was told that the big thing is for them to have some kind of warning. That's what Nicole said, yeah, a warning, counting down and giving a warning. Believe it or not, I thought that if I gave him advance notice, he'd run like hell the other direction. But turns out, if you give them a warning, that's all they need is the 5 seconds to process, this is what's coming next. And then they're like, oh, okay, no big deal. And then they go in there and they'll do it. It's amazing. Like, I couldn't believe my kid. I thought at age 2, he wasn't even able to count from 5 backwards. Like, I didn't even think he'd understand that. Like, and never mind did he understand it. It was like game changer. So I definitely would try that. Danny said, tried it years ago with no luck. Maybe no interest in her part. Keep trying. I don't know exactly what you were referring to when you said tried it years ago, but keep trying, whatever it is. Again, it's not like all these things are going to work for every kid. I'm just telling you what's worked for my son, but definitely you should try it, because sometimes I would be like, wait a minute, you know, this isn't ever going to work for him, and I tried it and it did. Like, things just will surprise you sometimes. You think you're a good mom, and even if you are a good mom and you're great with your typical kids and you think you know a lot of stuff about how to help kids out, sometimes somebody will suggest something that seems so simple and it ends up changing everything for you. And so just try these different tips, and some might work, some might not, or maybe they'll work later, but don't give up, just keep trying. Bethany, yes, Jared is in a public middle school. So his middle school has 7th and 8th grade. There's like 1,200 kids there. It's a big school. But he's in a special ed class it's considered functional academics. The special ed class, the group of special ed kids he's with, they do academic work, but they're not necessarily working at grade level. So his class is more functional academics. So it's academics in the sense that they're learning skills that will help them in the real world, and not necessarily gonna get them on a diploma track for graduation from high school. So he'll graduate, but he won't necessarily have a diploma unless things change drastically. I mean, you never know. But right now, as he entered middle school, they basically have to decide, is he on a diploma track or is he not on a diploma track? And they determined that in our case, in our school, there were 3 groups of special ed. There's the severe kids, which he didn't fit into. There's the middle group, which is the functional academics that he's in. And then there's the more high functioning kids that are on a diploma track. So those are going to be your kids that are like higher functioning, maybe Asperger's or severe ADHD, things like that, where they're able to do the schoolwork, but they just need a little bit more accommodations and assistance. So he didn't really fit into that group, unfortunately. So even though he's super smart and he can do a lot of the academic work, because of his deficits, he's just not really able to be on a diploma track right now. So which is okay. I've accepted it. I think you'll realize when your kid is younger, you might be struggling because you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and you don't know. I always used to want to look into a crystal ball and just know what he was like at 15 and 20 and 10 and understand where he was going to be, and good or bad, so I could just accept it and move on. But obviously that's not reality. And over the years, I just, you just start to settle into it, and you realize like exactly where your kid is. And for us, it was just an acceptance process over the years. I grieved at first, I went through the grieving process, and then, got through the other side. And now I am fully in acceptance mode. He'll probably live with us for life, and I've accepted that. And I love him, and I try to look at the blessings, like, okay, he's going to be with us long term. And that is, how many moms get to have a loving child with them their whole life that loves them unconditionally and brings them joy. So I'm trying to look at the positives now versus before, all the things he won't be able to do. It is a process though, so just give yourself grace and time to get to the end. But I think most of you will find, like, once you've gotten through the hard part, you will get to where you're like, okay, I just accept the way things are now. And it's so nice when you get there because it's a relief. You just don't have to stress anymore, and you can just be like, I am happy with the way things are. Let me see if there's any other questions. So you're welcome for explaining the middle school thing. Middle school is daunting. Just so you know, I cried the year before he went to middle school when my other son was doing a back to school night for his middle school. I was thinking my son, Jarrett, was going to be in middle school the following year. I called his teacher at the time, who I love, and I was like, I don't think he can do this, next year. He's not ready, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, he'll be ready by then. He'll be ready, I promise. And I'm like, and so I was there right before middle school. Freaked me out, not gonna lie. I'm kind of getting there about him going into high school now. I was freaked out about it, and I thought there's no way he's gonna be able to do this, and he did it. So they were right, and it's maturity. By a year, a lot happens in a year. Right now I can't picture him in high school, but I'm sure next year, this time, he'll be doing great in high school. You just got to take it 1 month at a time, 1 day at a time, and try not to stress out about the following year. He will get there. Your kid will get there. By the time it comes, they'll be ready. And if they're not, then you can always hold them back or whatever. I actually held Jarrett back for 8th grade because mostly of COVID. If COVID hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have made him repeat 8th grade, but I wanted him to have the full 8th grade experience, and he didn't have any of that last year. So he's technically supposed to be in 9th grade this year, but I held him back, and it was the best decision ever. So trust your gut and know that you're doing the best for your kid, and you're going to make mistakes, and things aren't going to be perfect, but you're doing your best, and that's all you can do. And try not to stress. I know it's hard to say this because, believe me, I was there, and I stressed every day for years. But try not to stress and know that you're doing the best you can. And no one decision that you make or don't make is going to alter their future for the worse, drastically. So just try your best. Learn from the other people that are around you. This group is amazing. If I had this group when he was little, I would have been so much better off, just to bounce things off other parents and to learn. I got on this group probably 4 years ago, and it was the best thing ever. I wish I could have been on it, sooner. I wish it was around sooner, but better late than never, because it's, even when people are talking about kids that are drastically different from mine, because I don't even really feel like Cooper and Jarrett are very similar. In some ways they are, but I learned so much from her videos because it just gets you thinking, oh, wait a minute, I should try this, or I haven't thought about that, or whatever. And it gets you thinking about things you could be doing to help your kids. So I think the first step for being a good parent is being part of this group and reaching out and letting people support you, asking questions, and all of that. I'm so excited I got to do this live. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The only other thing that I was going to mention is about timers. With Jarrett, I still use timers a lot, and that helps him. For example, if we're at a swimming pool and we're leaving at a certain time, he is fine with leaving as long as he knows what time we're leaving, or how many more minutes he has. So again, it's kind of going back to the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but instead you can do it in minute increments, or you can do it at a certain time. So I'll tell him, hey, Jarrett, we're going home at 6 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock we're going to get out of the pool, we're going to go. He pops right out. It's no problem at all. Like in the old days, it would have been a struggle to get him to leave at a certain time or whatever. Now it's fine. Same thing with showering. He likes to stay in there and he's typical teenager, I guess, and take long showers, and he'll be in there for a long time, and I'm like, buddy, I stick my head in and say 5 more minutes, and then 4 more minutes, and I just let him know this is and he's always like, last minute. He always wants to add more time, and that's fine. But I just let him know, this is the timeline that we're working on, and that tends to work great with him. So these are the kind of things that hopefully, let me know if you find any of the things that I talk about helpful. I'd be happy to do more Zooms in the future if anybody wants that. But I think, the main thing is to just find what works for your kid. Try to use those tools as often as possible to reduce anxiety and to make them feel like they have a sense of control. When he was really little, for example, he didn't ever feel, I feel like he didn't feel in control of his life. And so he would just reject things because that was the only thing he could exert control over in his entire life, because he couldn't communicate and he wasn't getting the things he wanted. I'm sure he was really frustrated. So he would just, he would just say no to things or object to things because it was just a way for him to control the situation. So anything you can introduce to make them feel like they still have control, they're aware of the situation, they're able to understand what's happening, is going to smooth the way for your child and make things easier for them and for you. So I really hope that, you've picked up on a couple things here today that will help you. And if anybody has any questions before I wrap up, I was trying to keep it like within an hour. Then, shoot me a quick comment. And also, if you're watching the replay, then, please comment as well. Let me know if there's anything that you really appreciated hearing about. Because also what I could do is I could post some tips on the, on the Coops Troop page. If there's certain topics that a lot of people want more information on, I'd be happy to post some stuff on there. But otherwise, I think we're pretty much done. I don't know if it was helpful, but I hope it was. And if you're still on there, thank you for hanging with me for this whole time. And I guess that's it. But you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. And I guess we'll be seeing each other online. And thanks again. Take care. Bye, guys.